Hello and welcome back to the E.ON Innovation Days. My name is Caroline and I work for E.ON Infrastructure Solutions. And here with me today is Stephan Hakansson, our Global Director for Energy Solutions for Cities and Industries. Welcome, Stephan.
Thank you.
Today we're going to talk about the revolution of waste. Very, very interesting topic. And of course, you at home also have the chance to ask your questions over the chat function that we will answer during the session. As I said, we're going to talk about waste, a rather unattractive topic at the first sight. So waste, many people think, is useless, is dirty, and I think the most common visual actually is a plastic bag in the ocean. But it's also a very important topic because it is affecting every one of us, being a byproduct of human activities. At the same time, or one actually very interesting fact for us is that in Europe, every person is using 16 tons of material every year, and 6 tons of that become waste. So it's an incredibly huge number. And this is also why it's so interesting for us as an E.ON utility, and we're going to talk about that more in the next sessions. So there is visible parts of waste, but also invisible parts of waste that we are now going to talk about. But then let's start with the visible parts of waste. What is E.ON's opinion on that?
Yeah, this is actually one of our biggest challenges in society today, and I'm disturbed, really disturbed about us seeing it as a getting rid of a problem issue. Mm-hmm. Let's get it into a landfill, or let's get it into some incineration, and we just get rid of it. Instead, we should turn it around and see it as a resource, because it's actually what it is. Mm-hmm. And if you can do that, you open up a field of innovation, of possibilities, where we can take the next step in the sustainability.
Mm. And what do we actually need to do to really use it as a resource?
So we in E.ON, we adopted many years ago already the so-called waste staircase. Mm-hmm. There is also a EU legislation. Mm-hmm. It starts with first you want to minimize all your usage of material and resources. And the second level is you need to recycle when you cannot minimize any longer. So if you have a bicycle and it's done, you don't buy a new one. You try to have the next one in your generation using that. When you're done your recycling, you need to see if you can take the next step and see, can you recover? And recover when you are done your recycling and minimizing what can no longer be used anymore. Mm-hmm. That kind of recovering, energy recovering, is where we also are focusing a lot. And only the very last part is when you go to disposal, and this should be avoided. Mm-hmm. So for us today, we're looking into, with innovations, with new technology, to first minimize and all the way down to optimize the usage in the life cycle of all material.
You just mentioned the recycling point, which I find very interesting. What does that mean for E.ON now? Is E.ON's role then to be in the recycling business and to carry home the waste of our customers and reuse it, or how is it actually working?
So yes, this is a challenge which we, E.ON, we cannot solve alone. This is a society challenge where we need to work with partners and actually all parts of the society. If I start in a household, in your own household, how does it look there actually? How are you recycling your resources instead of throwing them just away in one bin? And if you do that really well, you actually create value so others can reuse. And when it cannot longer be reused, you can recycle it. One practical way actually is this bag. Yeah, my wife complained with me that I'm not so good in using this bag, but it's a normal food waste bag. Mm-hmm. And when you actually put your food waste in this, then our partners take this food waste bag and we make biomethane out of it by fermentation. Mm-hmm. And just one bag will drive a normal Volkswagen car 2.1 kilometers. Wow. Instead of using gasoline. Mm-hmm. So that's just one example of what we can do in really using all our resources in a better way.
But it's still made of plastic, so it's a toxic material. How is it going with that? Can you basically burn everything, or is it limited?
No, so this doesn't go into burning. So this is biomaterial, this plastic, and what you put in here is all going to fermentation and producing biomethane that we then can use, for instance, replacing some of the fuel, gasoline or diesel in the cars. The plastic topic is a super important topic. We many times get accused of, you just want to burn waste because you want to make money and you don't care about the environment, which is totally wrong. When we are doing a lot to make sure we progress, again in the staircase, to minimize, don't use plastic. And when we need to use plastic, we need to make sure it's the right plastic. We need to take our responsibility. So all the waste that we use in the recover phase, we make sure it's certified. We know where it comes from, we know what it is, and we try to separate those things that cannot be recovered in the best way. We need to then send it to recycling.
So now we talked about the visible parts of waste, but there are also invisible parts of waste, like for instance waste heat coming from air conditioning machines. Could you also tell us a little bit more about this one?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. So one of our problems is actually we get locked into this waste topic, which is many times recognized as the bag that comes out of this. If you look to the society first, where does it start? Heating in our cities and our industries actually account for 85% of our greenhouse gases. And when you open the hatch and actually dive in and look a little bit more what's going on in there, then we see that there is a lot of waste heat just going out in the atmosphere. One example, in Germany alone, there is 53,000 data centers. That's all using, our devices, making sure that works. They are using a lot of electricity and cooling, and they have a lot of residual heat just being fanned out. Another example, London subway. All of us have more or less been in a subway. When the train breaks, just in the London subway, residual heat that goes lost is more than a nuclear reactor annual production. Can we use that heat? Yes, we can. With our innovations, with our technology, we really have it ready. We can take this waste heat and put it into use. That is what we're focusing on.
Could you give a concrete example here where we are doing that as E.ON?
Yes. Let's start with one example in Sweden, in Örebro. We had a few of our colleagues that were looking for where we have the biggest waste heat resources available. And we have this infrared camera we try to shoot over the city, cold winter morning days. And the biggest waste resource that was coming out in Örebro, do you know where that was?
No.
It was the ice hockey arena in Örebro.
Oh.
They're making a lot of ice, and it's like a fridge. On the back side of the fridge, when you make cooling, it gets a lot of heating. So on the roof, there was this huge fans just pumping out the heat up in the air. So we found that opportunity together with the real estate company Broporten. We managed to make a solution where we can take that heat together with a heat pump solution, feed it back into the district heating. So that's how we actually make some of our customers to be producers. We recycle and take back the heat back into usage.
I think that's kind of ironic that actually one of the best applications for waste heat is then cooling and chill. So that is also a very creative way of thinking about that. But then you also need to have the market or the customer co-located to that site. Is that always the case, or what are you doing if there is no market for the waste heat close?
Yeah, that's one of the challenges. So many times this low temperature waste heat is difficult to use because you need customers around it that can use that temperature. So what we need to do, and we need to first see, so how cities and industries are developing. We have the urbanization wave. We need to do something differently. And we need to find the new power plants of the future. That's not normal incineration power plant somewhere. We need to find what could that be, and really always try to find how you can store heating. And then district heating is a fantastic arena. Just in Stockholm or Berlin, let's take Stockholm alone, we have more than 100,000 cubic meter in the grid. Just imagine how big thermostat is. So you can take the waste heat from a supermarket, you can take the waste heat from the data centers and any other area, and you can feed it into the grid. Then you don't need to have the customers next door. You can have the customers somewhere else. And with digitalization, we can steer the flow in a lot better and efficient way as well.
That sounds like a brilliant system, and also in a perfect world that will all work out. But how do you explain then that only 40% of the waste in Europe is actually reused or recycled? So who actually needs to drive that transition, and how can we get better here?
Yeah, that's a good question. Coming back to that, we cannot do this alone. Going back to this staircase, so in this last part where it's disposal or landfill, still a lot of countries allowing landfill, and some countries actually have up to 80% of all the waste going to landfill. So we need to do this together with the legislators, with politicians, with the society. We need to have the right legislation in place. Secondly, it's about behaviors. It's about the customers, about you and me, and how we are doing this. It's about my wife also being on my back, making sure I also sort and take my part of the share to really contribute. It's about an awareness in the society. And as urbanization goes on, we move into the cities in a more denser way. We need to also feed each other in the system and use the energy a lot better.
And I think another challenge is also the identification of that heat sources. You touched on that quickly earlier. Could you maybe also explain to the audience how we're actually identifying that heat sources that we can then use?
Yeah, so one really good example was when we actually made a good collaboration with international real estate company Lendlease in Italy, where we have the Milan Expo. It's a large area that is going to be rebuilt. It's going to be a university. It's going to be a lot of living areas. It's going to be an incubation for a lot of companies. And when you start planning it from beginning and you see how it's going to evolve, you can immediately see how different customers is going to have a need for heating. Some customers going to have a need for cooling. And some countries going to have a need for electricity and even steam. And when you see that whole system, you can optimize it. It's actually again looking at the refrigerator, and with heat pump technology, with new innovations going to lower temperature, we can make the system feeding each other. So a customer is not only a customer, it's also sharing what he or she doesn't need to the next customer. And optimizing this system actually enables us to believe we might be able to have non-combustion supply in cities by reusing in a lot better way, so we don't need additional primary energy. We should find the new production plans for the future in the cities to make sure we can reduce new combustion.
And I think that's also a big challenge for our customers and partners, that they all also need to come up with more ambitious sustainability targets here. So how is E.ON then concretely supporting them?
Yes, that's a good question, because it varies a little bit from customer segment to segment. So some of our customers, mainly the industrial side, they are in harsh competition. So it's very important, whatever we do together with them, we need to enhance their ability to win on their market against their competitors. So sustainability is one thing, but it's also the beauty. If you are really well in this resource optimization, you also cut down costs. Sure. So this goes hand in hand, the sustainability and the commerciality, and therefore we can improve. Another example I like to highlight is in Berlin, which I briefly touched on earlier. We have a solution with a large real estate company where we actually take the heating in a wastewater sewage canal. And we take that heating and transform that into heating that can be actually used in the house.
Wow.
So this kind of spillages is only we are only able to use that if we can work very close to the customers and very early in their development phase.
And if we are also very creative in finding new heat sources, obviously. I see that we are also now having the first questions from the audience, so also let's take a look at them. You have talked a lot about cities and businesses, but how do you get citizens involved in the decarbonization of heat? Is the first question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And then I actually don't have the perfect answer for that. I wish I had. One thing is very clear. Our business is a local business. Where we are, it's always being present locally. So when we are doing, if it's district heating or cooling, or if it's power, or if it's efficiency, it's actually being local presence. So when we want to change something in the infrastructure, it needs acceptance from the society, from the municipality, from the customers. One example, again, I take in Stockholm, where we together with the municipality are joining up for hearings with all the public about, okay, how do we now do this to improve the recycling? And we actually have an idea here to, if we recycle really well, so if I recycle really well, and this, we can use the resources from my house, then the biogas and the heating and cooling that comes back from E.ON, maybe I should pay for that depending on how good I am in doing my recycling. That would really close the loop. So we're testing this idea. It has a lot of hurdles, legislation that needs to be adapted. But that's one ambition we have to drive.
Yeah, and also we're having that visitor centers, for instance, in Malmö and Hylje, where citizens can really go and learn more about the whole solution, right? I really like that. The second question is, how will the Green Deal accelerate the implementation of ecosystems you talked about in the urban areas?
Yes, so that is a really exciting topic. So first was a lot of different legislations coming the last years, and then Greta Thunberg made a revolution among youth in the world, and then Ursula von der Leyen really put Europe on the map to take the pole position. So this is exciting. All the consequences of that we still do not know. We do know, however, that we need to target first the big emitters. And heating as itself stands for 30% of all the emissions that comes out. So heating will be a target where you need to go into recycling and better reusage. It will drive it more faster. And it's also clear we see already today 6 out of the European countries have the last 12 months forced in new legislation towards this direction. So it's about more consciousness in the population. There could be more taxes on not utilizing waste heat. 53,000 data centers, almost criminal to let that heat going up in the air.
Absolutely.
We should really use that. And I think that will accelerate the usage for it. But let's see.
Do you think that journey is also driven by the COVID-19 pandemic? Is there also more funding expected from that point of view?
Well, yes. So the whole topic about Corona slowing down society development, the politicians came to conclusion we need to, so to say, jumpstart the society, and at the same time take the opportunity to take a leap towards more sustainable solutions. So this I'm very much looking forward to, and we will be ready to explore further innovations and test new technologies when that becomes available.
Very good. Let's go to the next question. Sorry, I should have bring my glasses. With the public discussion at climate change going on, do you see higher customer interest towards recycling solutions?
Yes, I do. Most of the cases when we discuss with the customer, it starts from the financial perspective. Most customers are really keen on reducing the cost and to improve their competitiveness and the result. So as a consequence of that, what can we do to also recycle and be more efficient? So our discussions is quite advanced in that area today.
Then I'm going to the next question. In the new build, we can put heat resources near customers. But how do we address this in the already built environment? I think that is going in the area that we already spoke about with the Bern hockey arena, so I will skip that for now. In the new build, we can put heat sources to new customers. In the new build, we can put heat sources near customers, but how do we... Sorry, I need to go closer for a little second. Really have problems to read it. In the new build, we can put heat sources near customers, but how do we address the already built environment? That is the same that we just had. We must take temperatures for central heatings down. How can waste here help to cool down the system?
So I couldn't fully hear you. So what was...
We need to put the temperature in our heat systems down.
Yes.
How can waste help here to put temperatures down in the system?
Yes, so here we have a very strong development on innovations, which is very exciting to see how we can bring new technology into this arena. So first, when you have a higher temperature, you need, together with the construction companies, make sure that the houses are built for lower temperature usage. So early discussions with many different partners is important.
What kind of temperatures are we talking about here?
So normal, for instance, in a heating system in a city, you are between 80 and 100 degrees. In some Eastern European cities and also Paris, you are between 100 and 200 degrees.
Wow.
So it's really high temperatures. Going down in temperature reduces losses, improve efficiency, and you can use the energy more than once as well. So what you normally do if you have a system, you put a secondary system to it, heat exchangers, and you use the lower temperature. What is very exciting is with heat pumps and with digital technology of steering with the heat pumps, we can use cooling and heating down to between 30 and 60 degrees, usable for living, but you can also make cooling, like the refrigerator I was talking about before. So this kind of technology we're now testing in Italy, in Germany, and in Sweden. And really starting to implement, and we see that there's going to be a change, going to even lower temperature and improve the efficiency.
And also reducing the primary energy factor, probably, and also helping the customer to decarbonize, right?
Yes, that's true. That's the overarching measurements we're having to show how we are improving over time.
And are we already testing that concept also on a concrete project, or is it more still in the testing lab?
So it's really great in Germany. We won the Realabor contestant, so we are now going to implement in 4 large city quarters in North Rhine-Westphalia with the technology of going to lower temperature. We're also testing the topic when we are going to rebuild the airport Tegel into a new city quarter in Berlin. We're doing the same thing in Milano, as I touched upon before, and we are also already implemented it for a large hospital in Sweden and also for a research facility in Lund.
And when you're mentioning then the balancing of energy, how is that physically working, or what is actually balanced against what?
Yeah, so it's good. So normally when you have this kind of low temperature system, you have the customers with a few buildings, and you have cooling need at one place and heating need at one place. And then you have the pipeline in between with heating and cooling out of water. Then you have the local heat pumps, and then you have let's say a computer who's steering the flows, depending what each customer need at each time. So if you need more heating at one place, it's like you're putting an extra more cooling at one place, you're putting then an extra refrigerator there. And then on the back side of that refrigerator, you get extra heating that you can send to the other customer next door. And that's how you can steer, depending on the need of the different customers, heating and cooling and balancing it out.
That's a super system. I will take a look at the next question, and thank you for making it bigger. Who are significant partners for E.ON in that energy transition?
So this is a topic that we are continuously exploring. So as I described earlier, when it comes to collect waste and the physical waste and separate it. That's not something we do in E.ON. So here we work with several partners, for instance, Ragn-Sells in Sweden. When it comes to producing biomethane and utilizing it into either the vehicle sectors or trucks, or actually into CHPs and reduce natural gas, this is also where we use several partners that is good at each area. When it comes going into the city, and when we have different real estate companies, then we're working with partners such as Landis, as we talked of before, but also companies in Sweden, where we work with construction companies like Skanska. There we have partners actually in all countries, most of the time local partners. On the industrial side, this is one of the exciting areas linking to the Sustainable Development Goals from UN. Goal number 9 for the industry is how to really decarbonize that. Here we see that this has been a journey where we need to establish trust. And we have customers like DS Smith, where we are jointly looking into all of their industrial sites and see how can we decarbonize them. What is common is it is all about partnerships, long-term relationships and trust. That's when we can do the best.
Very good. Looking at the next question, can non-recyclable municipal solid waste be used as fuel for local energy systems?
Yes, it can. So non-recyclable waste. So if we take this part, and when that becomes biomethane, it has 2 fractions. One fraction actually goes back to the acres, to the farmers for fertilization. The second fraction goes into incineration, and then it becomes heating and electricity, then goes back to the customer. And then so there will always be fractions coming out, and that's how we see this detoxification. You could have a strategy, if you have something poisonous, to dilute it. If you dilute it as much, then you go under the levels, and then it's not classified as toxic anymore.
Okay.
Or you can take the strategy to instead concentrate the toxin, and then you can extract the high level of toxin and put it into reusage. So metals like vanadium or lead, we are recycling that back while we are incinerating the things that can no longer be recycled by concentrating the toxins. So we're not only reusing and getting energy out of it, we're also detoxifying it.
Thank you. The next question is, sounds like we need a change of thinking how we get society to spot waste heat sources and use them. So do we want to use actually citizens to really identify that heat sources, like the Bern Arena, the hockey stadium in Sweden?
Yes, I think I was talking to a colleague earlier here this morning who was discussing, why don't we use crowdfunding? Because all our infrastructure solutions is, of course, very costly. And of course, we need to finance it. It's a one challenge in itself. But the other topic, how do we get citizens and other people committed? I have one real estate company, and one manager in that company is the sustainability manager. She approached me and asked if they could buy a part of our infrastructure. Because she thinks she can sell her apartments to a higher price. If you own the apartment, you also own the infrastructure. So this kind of commitments with people, with our customers, in the end, the people living in our society, is something we are starting to explore, even though it gives our lawyers gray hairs. Not so happy with me.
Yeah, but that's also the commercial aspect behind sustainability, that it's actually raising the values of real estate, for instance. I think that's very cool. The next question is, can you retrofit district heating in cities to move from using fossils to using existing heat sources?
Yes, that can be done, and it is being done. it is quite challenging, and it's not so easy to just take a standardized piece from one place and just make sure we do it the same everywhere else. Because buildings have been built in different ways with ventilation and shaft. So this kind of retrofit project is something we are now exploring. What is really a great potential we're seeing now is the digitization. Being able to steer ventilation and being able to measure everything in a building, from moistures, from temperature, from the ventilation in itself, then we can do a lot more, a lot cheaper, and therefore a lot more efficient. And this is also an area where we foresee also more innovation to come.
I think we can take one last question. It's also going about digitalization. Digitalization is a core for our solutions, but data require a lot of energy too. What can E.ON do to solve this dilemma?
Yes. As I said, the data centers in itself is very high energy consumers. But I must also say that the data centers and the digitization area in itself is emerging, is new. There will be a lot of higher efficiency also coming there. So I think, again, it's about very early in when you're designing things in a city to think about the whole circular structure, the Kreislauf, how the flows is going, and how can you optimize every part of the flow? How can one part feed into another? Doing that in an early planning phase is what I think is the critical part to be able to do it. The second part is also getting trust. In Norrköping in Sweden, it took us 12 years to get to a level where we could agree on how we can build a system where we actually use the energy up to 4 times. Industry,
4 times, wow.
district heating, cooling, and lower temperature heating. But it's not easy to build that, because when you build a system where one customer is going to be dependent on the other customer, you need a lot of trust, and you need to be able to find that system working. So being there, talking about it, making it present and transparent for everybody, it's critical.
I think then we are already coming to the end of that session. Thank you very much, Stephan, for answering all that questions.
Thank you.
To all the audience, we also have a virtual booth in the exhibition hall, and we would be happy if you also visit that booth, where also Nick Piercy and the team will also answer all the questions that are left. Thank you very much for that. I think one of the key takeaways is actually that we all need to work together to develop solutions, to reuse and recycle waste, and also to not longer see it as a problem, but more as a resource. The next session will be about one of the E.ON values. It's called Better Together, where Axel Löber will talk about how E.ON is driving the energy transition together with our customers. With that said, I wish you all a good afternoon. Thank you, Stephan. Stay safe. Bye.
Thank you.